You can look all around to see there's a revolution in manufacturing today. And it really extends from the shop floor to the top floor.
You're listening to Competing Digitally, a Flexware Innovation original podcast. At the intersection of manufacturing technology, leadership, and you.
I think one of the things that I would focus on in next gen HMI would be really focusing on what does the user actually need to see and what do they need to be able to take in order to do their job, to do the operation the most efficiently as they can, highlighting the things that are going wrong and not highlighting the things that are operating as they should be.
Our graphic people call that the UX, right? The user experience. And that has been something that we've seen as an evolution of people moving toward that over the last few years. That it used to be where you just created a UI and you have programmer art there and you have all these boxes that are next to each other and all this stuff and the set points, and everybody just uses that and they're happy with it. But all the web design techniques and all the information that's so readily available, it's like it makes so much more sense to actually design it with the user in mind these days.
I think we've all seen those HMIs that have just data everywhere on the page. It looks terrible. And I think the next gen would be cleaning that up and presenting it in a way that makes sense to the end user.
So let's talk about presentation. Where do you see next gen HMIs being presented to the operator? Like on what kinds of screens and where are they going to use them?
I've got a word: mobile.
Yeah.
The
phones, tablets, all the above.
Phones, tablets, especially phones.
Yeah.
The current gen or the prior gen HMI was all just HMI panels, right? So it's the HMI software and the hardware all in one, and click and drag and drop something there and then build something out, and it's not connected to anything, right? And as it's become more connected, I think the current gen is more of a connected HMI. So like we have software that allows you to connect up to a central ignition system, right? That is going to be able to stream data back and forth and do things in a bigger way. And that's still an HMI that's sitting there, but it's connected to a bigger system and it's able to take advantage of all those things. I think, next gen, we're talking somebody pulls out their phone on the plant floor, they're connected up to the network, or they're connected through VPN, or they've got two-factor authentication, they're even connected to the internet, and they have all those security pieces in place that are the same ones that you have on your banking website.
Or on their couch at home, right? And they're sitting on their couch at home and getting an alarm alert, and
tap on it, see, this pump's running a little bit hot, okay, I'm going to, pull it down and then make a reminder for talking to the maintenance guys the next day.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of the customers that I wouldn't say a lot, but we've had a couple customers ask us like, well, what about when you don't have internet, And that's definitely possible to store those things locally on the phone. Say an operator goes out and he makes a test down in like some bunker where there's no cellular connection. And they, submit everything. It's stored locally on the phone. As soon as, that connection comes back up, that gets sent up. I know we have a couple customers that we're doing that with, and it's just kind of taking that to the next level of it'd be great to be able to do your work right there instead of writing it down on a piece of paper and doing that twice and then inputting into the actual an HMI back at the operators.
The term I've heard is like occasionally disconnected. Is that a term that you guys are using in the industry, or that chance to sync up, or?
Yeah, we're not using that term, but that's the concept. Is pretty common. We've got a feature coming out in Ignition that's going to allow for that type of thing a lot better than we do today too. So there's offline form feature that we're working on. So probably Ignition 8.2 is going to have that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was thinking back, my history goes all the way back to the early 90s and all the acronyms that we used for HMI. So, it was Operator Interface Terminal, OIT, which think of like panel views and very connected to the machine, right? And controls engineers like me, we drew the boxes and the set points and all that kind of stuff. Then we had MMI, and then we got politically correct with HMI, and then we got SCADA. So, all these different terms, right? So where would you guys like HMI, SCADA, we kind of say those in the same sentence today. What's the difference between HMI and SCADA today? How would you differentiate?
I'm hesitant to answer first. Because I feel like I've been talking a lot, actually.
That's okay. You're part of the guest here, so.
Sure. So to me, the line has been blurred a lot. So you've got HMI over here. That is a human-machine interface. It's the thing that somebody interacts with, right? But then the functionality in it versus the functionality of the SCADA, because somebody interacts with the SCADA as well. It's also human and machine interfacing, right? I think because everything's so much more connected, it's possible to bring some of those traditionally SCADA functions down into the HMI and still have it feel like an HMI, feel like an operator interface, where operators, once again with the smartphone thing, they're so much more used to having apps that give them the possibility and the ability to basically pull in more information from multiple different places, have those inside their traditional phone apps. They're going to, connect up to their Google account, and they're going to see all the stuff from Drive, and they're going to see all the documents, and they're going to see all the spreadsheets, and they're going to see all the slides and presentations, and all this functionality used to be, 10 different applications, and they've got that in one spot. I think that folks are starting to expect that in the HMI a bit more now, where you used to just have some real-time status and control and maybe a couple of trends that had the last 5 minutes on them. At this point, we're noticing more people wanting to pull in, give me the last few days or the last, month of data in there. Give me reports right on the HMI. Let me generate something. Give me an interface that allows me to talk to a supervisor, that allows me to put in a maintenance work order, that allows me to connect up to our ERP and pull down orders in real time. That type of stuff you never used to have on the HMI itself. It wasn't possible, but the technology exists today that you can.
Kind of giving that operator, and kind of going back to next gen, giving that operator context around the real-time data, and also bringing in those analysis type data that you were talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I have one thing that I've really enjoyed seeing emerge over the last few years is machine learning. And I have, I took it upon myself to learn a fair amount about it. And so I can talk to people about algorithms and what we have built into Ignition and all that. And all that runs on the HMI too, right? You can do linear regressions and neural networks and, like clustering algorithms in there. We've got k-means built in, and, all of that can be contained, even if the HMI is separated from the rest of the network, even if it's not connected to a SCADA that connects to multiple different places. You have so much more power in these HMIs than you used to in the past.
I was thinking also, since Flexware started as an MES integrator, the other thing that we're seeing integrated into machine interfaces is that ERP and MES functionality, right? So bringing down orders, quality control type stuff, blending that with OEE, just that interface is no longer HMI, SCADA, MES terminal. It's everything, right? And so we're, now the key is to build user interfaces that people like to work in, that have all those different pieces of functionality, including MES and ERP integration type stuff.
Yeah, it's really, really great to hear you focus on that UX, because there are so many people who still don't. There's so many integrators who we work with who it's an afterthought, right? The user experience, they say, well, we're going to put something out there. This is what they asked for, not this is what we tried to figure out is going to be the most valuable to them on the screen and the most accessible way.
I would say, though, Kevin, that, having a UX team or, that UI design team is not, we're working on it. We're working on next gen stuff, but it is not very common in the like you said, in the integration community. I do think, like even Purdue universities, where we get a lot of our students, they have a new UX UI degree in the Polytechnic Institute, which is exactly for that, right? And so think mobile web design, all that kind of stuff. And I do see us as a leading integrator needing to have more of that UX UI design capability to continue to build great user interfaces.
I always go back to, if I don't like to use it, the end user is for sure not going to want to use it. And so I always try to, that's one of my focuses, sit down and kind of draw it out in my head and on Visio or whatever it might be, Lucidchart, and kind of, okay, this looks good, kind of taking those initial steps to make sure that the end user is in mind, and make sure that they're going to have everything that they need and not enough, or not too much, I should say, to kind of help them make their decisions.
So if I can ask you guys a question, I'm always interested to know what are some of the exciting things that you've been working on. Do you have a specific customer or a specific technology that you put out there, or a specific thing that you can share that's not under NDA that you'd want to share?
I was thinking about that question, and for me, having been doing Flexware is 25 years old, and so one of the most exciting things to me is seeing customers that are going beyond a single line or a single plant. For a lot of our years, if you do a big MES application, it sometimes just makes it to one line. It is very hard to propagate that. It's the investment, it's the willpower of the company, it's all those things to take it beyond that one line into other plants. And we are really starting to see customers do that across multiple lines, multiple plants. So that's nothing proprietary. That's just in general we're seeing that, and I think having been in business 25 years doing MES thing, it's fascinating to me. We're just now seeing that, but it really is happening. So that's one for me.
I go to the project that we have. We have kind of a team that does AGV integration.
Oh, nice.
So basically automated forklifts, right? Like the product comes off the end of the line and they go right up to the line, pick it up, and take it to wherever they need to put it in the warehouse. And I was involved with a little bit of that project, and it was just the wildest thing, seeing like at the plant, like these forklifts to drive around on their own and doing their own thing, flashing lights and waiting for people as they walk across. It was pretty mind-blowing that kind of technology exists, and it was all done in ignition, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the little city of robots.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which Kevin, the other thing that's exciting to me is this product that we're talking about is called Lift, and building out repeatable, reusable solutions with the ignition platform. So we're not starting from scratch every time.
Yeah.
That's exciting with our whole team that Reese is a part of. Going into these customers, we're able to show them the Lift platform. And once they see it and understand, oh my gosh, it's whatever percent already built, it blows them away, and they're like, why would we ever start over with this? So
that's great.
That's very exciting for us.
Yeah, some of our more innovative integrators and bigger ones have started doing that, right? Starting productizing things a bit. So,
yes,
it's something that you can bring to somebody. It's not like you're going to charge them more because it's a product. It's exactly the opposite. You already have it pre-built. You already have the things ready to go. You got the templates set up there. You've got the scripts that you need. You've got the different building blocks inside there, and you can deliver it as is. Obviously, some configuration, some integration, and all that. But it's great to hear.
And
that
I think
you guys are doing
with
that.
some of that, we're doing some module development as part of that too. So just being able to use that capability within the platform is awesome.
Yeah.
So, and there's enough value in it too. We are able to charge not more, but we're less services and a little bit of product, right? Or a little bit of solution capability that allows us to get there faster, and the value is there for the customer.
Sure.
So I got one for you, Kevin, and that's just sales engineering at Inductive Automation.
It's a wild ride.
Yeah, you and Travis have been there a long time. By the way, I love the whole co-director development, co-director sales engineering. I think that's just fascinating from a culture standpoint, how Inductive does it. So tell us a little bit about what has been exciting for you, over the years, seeing the growth, and kind of what are you excited for in the future?
Oh yeah, it's been a wild ride. I came on with the company when we had, I think it was 8 people at Inductive Automation.
Okay.
That's 12 years ago now, and we're close to 200 people at this point. And obviously, we have ICC every year, and you guys have been out to our offices. You've seen where we are, and we're in over 100 countries, and we have tens of thousands of installations around the world. And so, we've gone from a company that is relatively low volume, right, and one salesperson, and a handful of engineers, up to a company that's the size that we are now. It's been a really fun ride. It's been really satisfying to be able to help shape the product. So Travis and I give a lot of feedback to our development team and to our training and our support teams and all of them as well, in terms of helping to bridge that gap between the customer and our folks who are actually creating the product. And so I feel at least a little bit responsible for where we are as a company and a little bit of that success. And, you know, without saying that, you know, obviously we have a lot of really brilliant people working for Inductive Automation, and, you know, without everybody, we wouldn't be where we are today. But we've just been seeing continual growth, which is, we've tried really hard to keep our company culture as we've started out small. And it's always, you know, when we started out, we were very much in the mindset of let's focus on the customer, let's be responsive to what the customer needs, let's adjust the software as needed, let's put bug fixes in right away. If people have an emergency situation, we need to focus on them. We really need to do this. And back then it was a little bit because we're at an inflection point, right? We're at a point where we could potentially become bigger. We've never not been at an inflection point.
Right, exactly. You've always been you've been on the hockey stick the whole time.
That's right. We just keep going like that. And, you know, it's a real challenge to keep up with that growth and keep the company culture. But we have an amazing HR department who has been, you know, we get so many resumes in and we pick the best of the best. And we have a really good process for that. And we have really good directors in place. We have a tenure, I think, of average tenure is like 7 or 8 years for the directors from a company that, you know, is relatively young, right?
Sure.
So it's, and that number might not actually be right. I think it might even be longer, but
sure.
But yeah, we, you know, and so I guess to answer your question, it's been a wild ride. It's not without bumps along the way. And, you know, when there are things that come up, we all scramble to try to take care of those things and help out, whether it be a process thing inside the company or whether it's a specific customer who's having an issue that they need help right away with, right? We're going to bend over backwards still and try to, you know, delight that customer, really.
So maybe put you on the spot for a specific one. What's been one of your more satisfying customer or integrator customer stories where you guys as sales engineering have helped solve a unique problem or maybe solve a unique way to be able to use Ignition to solve a problem? Can you think of one over the years that's been like, man, that was awesome?
I can't think of one specific that stands out because we have so many of those. So I can just mention one that was very recent. We had a company this one happened to be in Europe actually, and they were having an issue where the clients basically weren't updating at the rate that they needed to, the vision clients. And so going in, working with our support department, working with our sales engineering, our developers, pulling the whole team together and really taking a look and digging into the issue was what brought that to resolution. I can think of a few that are relatively easy things. Those are always nice, right? You can get on the phone and they say, I've been struggling with this. And you say, well, just take a look at this. So people often scale up, right? So they're going from 5 to 10 clients up to 200 clients on a single server. And at some point, the server starts getting slower, or with tags, for example, to different devices. And we have the tag conversation all the time. And we're able to just point them in the right direction, say, hey, you know, if you've got everything at a 1 second rate, and you've just dragged it all, and you've dragged everything in. Take a look at your diagnostics. You can see how well the PLC is keeping up with that. And if the PLC is not keeping up with that, then there's some things to change, right? You want to slow down some of the tags. You want to adjust the scan rates. You want to have move things from least to direct or have least on their own device connections. So being able to provide that type of quick advice and then see people come back the next day and say, my load on my PLC went from 200% down to 40% and things are running great and the customer's happy, right? That's super satisfying.
Big sigh of relief.
So back to your Europe one though, I mean, I'm just curious, was that because the projects we've been in, sometimes, you know, I remember one, it was the antivirus software that was, you know, the culprit for the whole plan not running at speed, right? So when you gathered everybody together, was it something you guys needed to fix and tweak within the product, or was it something you discovered in the environment, or what was the, you know, generally what was the resolution?
Sure. So the environment had some very strange things in it. And when I say strange, I mean things that don't come up often. Otherwise, we would have seen this issue before. But where network traffic to individual, one individual client on the whole network was set up in a way where it was delaying certain types of messages that were getting there. So we didn't actually tell them to fix that problem. Instead, we looked at what we could do inside Ignition to basically make Ignition kinder when people were having that kind of problem. So it was probably antivirus, or it could have been an overactive network scanner, network sniffer that was inside the network that was delaying packets in both directions. There's some other possibilities there too. Even a spotty wireless connection could have some effect in that way, but in their case, it was just an extreme case of that issue inside there. And so, we worked together, and the latest version of Ignition has a fix for their specific issue, but it's built into the platform itself.
That's
so
smart.
You go to 818, everybody is going to get that fixed.
Okay, cool. Because we run into that kind of stuff all the time, and it may not be the product, right? It's something weird like that, and the better the products are to work around that kind of stuff, the easier it is for semi-technical people to go solve it quickly, or just it doesn't even exist, right?
I got a question for you. What would be? You guys are always coming out with new stuff, and that's awesome. It's like, it's like Christmas. Every time a new release comes out, I go and look through all the release notes. What can I do next? But what are you most excited for, and for the future of Ignition? I guess.
I'm an engineer, so I'm going to get a little bit nerdy here.
Geeky on us. We like it. We're engineers too.
What we want to do shortly inside Ignition, and I'm talking 8.2, 8.3 timeline, is take all of the settings that are everywhere inside Ignition, inside the gateway itself, inside the image management, inside the tags themselves as well, everything that's not on disk, and move it to disk. And what that enables is a lot of version control options that weren't there before. You can start using Git in a very significant way. You can start using some of these modern IT tools. You can start a full DevOps cycle for this type of thing, which, inside the integration industry, you don't see a lot of that. But we've had more and more customers who are asking for that and wanting to just have every change tracked inside there, have everything recorded, have every change be able to be pushed out atomically as well, so that you can have one person working on something, another person working on another feature set, and have those feature sets completely separate here, including the tag changes, including the projects, and then have those pushed out to a QA server or testing server, and then pushed from there to a production server. So that's going to be really cool. We have Git integration and Git tools that we've been talking about. That might be an 8.3 timeline for that type of thing. And then more in the short term, which I think this is going to be an 8.1 timeline. I hope the devs don't get mad for me for saying that. But the Docker is something that we have had a lot of interest about, and we have our official Docker image, and we are working significantly on more Docker support. So we've got more options, more command line options coming to it. We have different licensing modes that we're working on inside there. So potentially at some point in the future, you're going to be able to spin up something Ignition on AWS or on Azure, and basically rent your license. Have it, I could spin this up and just use it for a couple of weeks and decide if I like it or not, and just pay for those couple of weeks, right? Have a kind of active license mechanism that's similar to how we do with Maker Edition for the full Ignition product.
I know your sales team will be happy about that, because I've had some conversations with Raman about, you have these temporary QA environments, dev environments, whatever, and you're going to spin it up for a little while and then shut it back down.
Right.
So
people don't want to buy a full license for that, nor should they, right?
And so that'll help with those situations.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, one of the things that we've used Docker for is creating a gateway and projects and kind of like our framework on Docker, and it's the same building block that we can use for other projects. So it's like just like what we use for a baseline, and then just steal it and use it from there. Yeah. It's really helpful.
And if you're using more modern IT tools like Ansible as well for configuration management, it plays into all of that too. because you potentially can take those Docker images, have them configured with Ansible if you're spinning up a new server. Lots of options.
Yeah. Do you foresee Docker being used in, or I shouldn't say do you foresee it, but do you see any hesitation in using Docker in a production environment?
Right now, the only good reason not to is because of the licensing. So right now, the licensing with Ignition, if you have it inside a Docker container and you move that with an orchestration engine, then you're going to lose that license as you move it, and you'll have to call Inductive Automation and work with us. If you're keeping that on the same Docker installation on that same system, it works great. So you can license it, you can use it, you can do whatever you want with it there. So if folks are trying to use more advanced Docker things like Kubernetes, for example, and some of these other orchestration engines, it doesn't really support that right now. But with the new licensing I was just talking about, that's where that support comes into play and should be able to be fine to be run inside the containerization stuff that's in Google Cloud Platform, that's in Azure, that's in AWS, that's inside companies' own IT networks as well.
Cool.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah. And we haven't dove too far into Docker, but I think it's a really, really cool thing that we have started to utilize and can continue to utilize in the future. It's glad to hear you guys are focusing on that. So.
Yeah, I've started when people need to have a test on a certain Ignition version, I've started spinning up Ignition Docker images of the different versions of Ignition, and I just have them all running on different ports on my system. So if it's Ignition 8.1.8, it's at port 8108. So I just have all the ports all set up. I can just connect and be ready to go, and it takes 2 seconds to spin up those Docker containers. It's so quick. It's not like VMs.
Right.
I have a bunch of VMs too.
Who doesn't?
You've been listening to Competing Digitally, a Flexware Innovation original podcast. Learn more about Flexware by visiting flexwareinnovation.com.